I am not going to lie. This has not been the best couple of weeks to be a Southeast Wyoming resident. Between the hailstorm that we got 2 days ago to today, where the majority of our property is basically underwater, it has been not too fun. So this is the area outside the dog fence, completely underwater. Most of the dogs area underwater. And we're not just talking a little bit of water, we're talking about multiple inches. And here we have some kind of little stream happening in the middle of the dog fence. And of course, where they wore the pathway when they run and check on the goats, it's completely its own little river, along with this area. It's draining from somewhere. I suppose it could be partially wind, but it's not blowing everywhere, so some kind of current there, which is weird. Doghouse completely underwater. Probably the worst part, again, multiple inches here, is goats who are not big fans of rain or water. Poor guys have been stuck in here, I'm guessing, all afternoon, because I just got home a short while ago. But to make my way over to them, completely covered in several inches of what is now swampland. But for these poor guys, almost their entire area is underwater. Now it's almost time for them to go in bed, and I was going to lock them in their house anyway. They are not the happiest critters, but I'm not certain that this is going to be drained by tomorrow. So while I generally am not encouraging wind, I do kind of hope the wind continues through the night and helps to mitigate some of this standing water. This is probably one of the deepest sections that's coming from the dogs area, this area into the goats. I mean, you can really see how deep it is by how the base of this spool is a couple of inches underwater. Obviously, we didn't live here at this time last year to know if this is typical or atypical or how frequent it is. We put the chicken coop here, so it was a nice level spot. But if the chickens were in here, you could see that they too would be swimming right now. So I had not been planning to put any kind of ground covering in here for the chickens. Again, we've lived here almost a year, right? About, I guess, 10 months really. This has never happened before. So if this is a once a year thing, not a huge deal. Although if this was full of chicken droppings, and now they would be floating all over the property, that would be kind of gross. Perhaps if we knew this was a possibility, we could have put the chicken coop at the high end of the property over there, which is not underwater. But seeing as we didn't know that, the coop itself is raised, so it's not underwater. I know, guys, I'm so sorry. So the coop itself would be fine because it's 6 inches, 8 inches raised up. The biggest question will be how quickly this drains. Because the ground is, at one point this spring I would have said is saturated, and that's why it's not draining. However, it had been kind of dry until these last couple of weeks of storms. So maybe it's so dry and compacted, that's why it's not draining. But I guess time will tell. We'll see how long it takes for this to subside. If I could trust the dogs to come out here and stay where it's not flooded, I'd let them run around. However, they will be swimming in a complete muddy mess. The good news is at least I can put Rip and Sky in my newly fenced area. But Loki jumps over this corner, so he needs to be walked, and frankly, there's not a whole lot of places to even walk him that aren't underwater at the moment. So the sun is trying to come out for the last hour of the day. I'll kind of reassess before I go to bed when I come to lock the goats in about an hour or so. But yeah, definitely not the most fun experience the last couple weeks. But thankfully, I do have some pretty grass. And we'll just say that this rain will help keep this grass nice and green. And I did wake up to a couple of blooms on my destroyed peonies. So maybe in a couple weeks, they'll come back and look as pretty as they did on Sunday. All right, so it's about an hour since I was out here before. Loki, please stay in there for literally 5 minutes. It's a jumping bean. So driveway starting to dry out a little bit. The pathway here to the dog yard is actually looking pretty good. Still pretty swampy there. Even this area here that seemed to have running water earlier, drying out a little bit. Doghouse area still pretty bad. I'm not going to go the whole way over to the goats because these dogs I don't trust to stay in the fence, but it looks a lot better. Goats have not come out of the house. They're still in there. Over by the chicken coop, much better. So my fingers are crossed that by tomorrow morning, this should all be pretty much soaked in. So as bad as it looked an hour ago, with the wind and with it, I guess, penetrating the yard, it looks way better than what it did an hour ago. So that bodes pretty well. When I go to let the goats in a little bit, I'll assess the chicken coop area. But super thankful to have this area for the dogs to be in this evening. Making my way about 40 minutes from the last time I was out. So when I came out to see the goats when I got home, this was all completely underwater. And it has mostly drained back in. Still a little waterlogged here. That area that Loki has created is still pretty underwater. This whole area in between was totally underwater. Not anymore. Oh, goats have ventured out of their house because they know I'm coming with cookies. And wow, there's definitely still parts underwater. Hopeful that by the morning, these wet spots should be dried up, pending no more rain overnight. Again, having not lived here for a whole year and experienced rain like this, hard to guess that this area we decided to put the goats who hate water in the area of the yard that's it's not draining as rapidly as every other area of the yard that is mostly looking not too bad. This is still fairly deep. Poor Leonard was so excited to get his cookies tonight, he fell out of his house into the mud puddle here. Poor guy. I know, now you're all wet. Unfortunately, because I was not home, the really can't get this light to come on. Because I wasn't home, I couldn't close their door. I think had I been able to close their door, their house would have stayed much drier than it actually did. The good news is that the perimeter of their pen is dry. So if they want to venture out, unfortunately, they have to come through all this water to get to the dry part, which is where their food is. But again, fingers crossed that through the night, these super wet areas drain off a little better. So today, I'm gonna try to do a couple of different things. I'm currently standing in front of what is becoming my sandbur field as, all right, take two. As I was saying, I'm standing in front of what is turning out to be my sandbur field. I picked some out of the dog area that I had topsoiled and reseeded, and killed all of the sandburs last year, but now they're coming back. But probably the worst is this entire section right here that comes from the well and goes to the driveway. This entire patch of what looks to be grass is nothing but sandburs. So at this point in the season, this is what they look like. So they're very easy to identify. So last night I did use my special spray to try to kill what's here. Now that the actual burrs are starting to pop out, they're a lot easier to identify. So I'm going to use that treatment. But there's a lot, right? So I suppose I should put on some heavy duty gloves and try to pull as many of them as I can and then either burn them or dispose of them in some way. But that's for another day. Today I am going to start working on the doors and windows for the chicken coop. So the last couple of days, when I've had a little bit of time, I've been working on the painting. And we'll see if Rip decides to hop out of the fence like he did the last time I came over here without him. Actually, I should probably, instead of letting him jump over again, I'm gonna put him on a leash, and then we'll walk over to the chicken coop. So I'm trying to decide. I've been working on the white paint, and I think with this run, I am just going to do the outside. Leave the goats alone. I'm going to just do the outside white. I think I'm going to just leave the inside wood color, but I'm not completely sure. The hope is to get this painting finished. I did get the inside of the coop mostly done. So the OSB and the insulation, the reason I'm not painting that backside is because I do have some chicken wallpaper that's going to go on a piece of plywood and get tacked there. But I was able to use my paint sprayer and get a pretty good coating on the rest of the OSB. Got my windows taped up, so pull that down. I think I want to do another coat on a couple of areas here inside the coop. But once I do that, we'll probably have to put the vinyl floor in before I do the litter shelf, because I don't want to build the litter shelf and have to be laying the floor underneath. So today's project entails making window coverings for these 4 windows. So they will have, once I'm done with the painting inside, they will have hardware cloth on the inside, but then I need a way to close them on the outside. So I saved the pieces of siding to use as the door. So I'm going to trim those a little bit, put some trim on, and try to get those made. And if time permits, I would like to get the nesting box constructed as well. It's a pretty easy frame, so that shouldn't take too long. So it really kind of depends on how the building of these doors and the building of this door goes. I want those doors to be complete before we end up putting the flooring in, just so that it's relatively secure. And then I'll worry about putting second coat of paint on some of the places that need it. So today's project. Always turning this the wrong way. Anyway, these are the pieces that we cut out of the window. And so my plan is I'm going to skim just a little bit off of all four sides, because that's going to end up being the actual window closure. So what I did, I went into the coop and I labeled all four windows A, B, C, and D. What side is up, and I matched up the lines of the board. So I'm just going to trim a really little bit off of all four sides so that when it is in the window, there's a little bit of clearance for it to open and close. Then I'm going to go around with a border to fill those gaps that I closed off. And then I'm going to put a border on the actual coop itself so that the border of the door attaches to the border around the window, just for a seamless finish. Now, that's the plan. Not sure how it's going to work, because frankly, these fit in pretty good as is. But yeah, I don't know. We're going to see. We're going to do one completely and see how that goes. And then if it goes well, I'll do the other ones the same way. So this is one for the inside of the coop. So if it ends up hideous, it's on the inside. Nobody will see it but me and the chickens. So I got all the corners for all four doors cut, made them all the same size. Even though the doors aren't the same size, that's okay. At least the insides will look somewhat uniform. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing with the door. I have the pattern. The one thing that I've been toying with is if I want to make it a Dutch door or just a regular door. And a couple that I've seen basically takes the panel, again, just like I did with these windows, the panel that we cut out of that side of the coop, and basically cut it in half. And then the top side folds down, and then you put a framed piece of hardware cloth behind it. I think that's a little bit of overkill maybe for the size of this coop. This coop is kind of small. It has the 4 windows that will have the hardware cloth. So I think I probably will just make one regular door. So I'm going to do it very similar to I just did to those windows. I bought bigger trim for the door just for scale. So I think I'm going to give that a go now. I'm going to take the piece of the door, see how it fits, see how much I want to trim on that one. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to frame it so that it fits in that hole. I'll be back. My daily afternoon thunderstorm seems to be on its way, unless it veers north and I get that weather, which would be okay. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep working until that rain is here. I think it's going to blow over. It's definitely going north, but looking kind of ominous. Teddy is usually my indicator of how bad the storm is. And she's not particularly disturbed. She's just chilling over there. But just in case it decides to head west instead of north, I think I'll take everybody inside for a little bit. Well, it did end up storming for several hours this afternoon, but after the aftermath of the storm, pretty sunset, although I missed sunset already because I was finishing this. Rip's helping me out. But I was able to get all of the windows and the door for the coop complete. The next step will be to paint them. I'll probably paint them before I put them up since the rest of the coop is already painted. And then I have to figure out how to do the trim around the outside of everything. So I think what I'm probably going to do is lay them out here on the ground and create the trim around the windows off of the structure, and then put the window in and then put the frame up there. So that's the plan for tomorrow. The had about a 2-hour storm, so the 2-hour storm definitely put a damper in my ability to get the nesting box done. But the goats came back out after the storm. Loki and Sky are probably pretty muddy because there were some pretty big mud holes in there. But the rest of us stayed dry, hung out inside for a couple hours, and I was at least able to get the window coverings and door complete today. So we're kicking off something new with this episode. It's called Front Porch Questions. And we're looking for our audience to help us solve some of the I don't know if they're frequent dilemmas, but some of the dilemmas that we are encountering here on the ranch. So one of the things that I love to do is to weed. Prior to moving to Wyoming, I was in a job that was soul sucking and soul crushing, and very frequently I would come home and I would go out to my garden and I would weed for hours. And the boys would say, "Mom, we think that you're addicted to weeding." And so of all of the things that I could be addicted to, I was fine being addicted to weeding, but basically it was therapy for me. So when we first moved out here, we don't have a lot of garden beds just yet. I was actually a little concerned that I didn't have anywhere to weed, and then we put in these tree lines. So what we're looking for in this week's question of the week is I'm looking for a solution for what to plant along these tree lines. So you can see here, yesterday, I spent a significant amount of time weeding this edge of the tree line. And the dirt is really pretty good dirt, right? The weeds come up very easily. Hasn't rained in a couple of days, and still I really had no problem pulling weeds. But if you pan over to this side, Chris, you can see this is the kind of thing that I have been dealing with. These tumbleweeds that are growing, random weeds that are growing, and I can't get the lawnmower in here. So what we're looking for is some kind of suggestion for what could be planted along, once I get all of this weeded, which will be a time-consuming project, but what we could plant along the edge of this tree line that would help to crowd out some of these pervasive weeds, maybe be pretty. I don't even care if it's pretty. I just don't want to have to spend many days weeding, because we have 5 of these tree lines that are all, what are they, 200 yards? They're all 200 yards in length. So it takes quite a long time. I don't have a problem coming and weeding the individual trees so that they grow, but this excess weed along the side is really what I'm struggling with. So we're calling this our front porch question of the week because we want you to imagine that you're sitting here with us in our favorite spot on the property, which is our front porch, watching sunset with the beautiful skies and wide open spaces. So please, if you haven't already, like us, follow us, and most importantly this week, help us solve that dilemma of what to plant along that tree line. So be sure to like and follow along. And if you have a suggestion of what we can plant along that tree line, please drop us a note in the comments and give us some good suggestions. If we end up using one of your suggestions, we'll be sure to feature you in an upcoming episode. Thanks so much.